Well, thanks, Pipa, for the wonderful introduction. And thank you to Wayne and the Soil Health Institute for inviting me to speak with you all today. As Pipa mentioned, I'm Katie Harrigan. I just got my master's in nutrition from the Tufts Friedman School, and I'm going to talk to you all today about federal and state soil health legislation. So this presentation will not be long enough to cover the many soil health policies, acts, and initiatives in the U.S. today. But I'll give you a brief overview of some of the more recent advancements in public policy related to soil health. So much of the information in these slides today has been pulled from that report that I put together last summer as a graduate student intern at the Soil Health Institute in partnership with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. I have linked that report and other resources at the end of my presentation for you all to access if you're interested in diving deeper into soil health policy. So even though there's too much to cover in a 20-minute presentation, that doesn't mean that there's not more work that needs to be done. There are still many more advancements that need to be made in public policy to highlight the importance of soil health. But in any case, the provisions and programs that I'm going to highlight today mark a move in the right direction. So first, let's kick off the conversation with a discussion on federal soil health policy. So the main legislation guiding soil health federally is the Farm Bill. The 2018 Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, was enacted in December of 2018 and will remain in effect until 2023. In the 2018 Farm Bill, there were around 60 provisions that will have direct and indirect impacts on soil health across our nation's agricultural land. Most of the provisions make advancements for soil health and assist producers and organizations in improving our soils, but there were a few changes that could potentially degrade efforts due to decreased funding and other structural program changes. However, actual implications are yet to be determined. The impacts of all these changes will need to be assessed through ever important measurement and analysis efforts. So without further ado, let's dive into a few of the big changes from the 2018 Farm Bill and their relationship to soil health. So first, I'm going to start with the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, also known as EQIP, which is a working lands conservation program administered by the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS. EQIP provides financial and technical assistance to producers for implementing conservation practices on their agricultural land currently in production. This program assists producers in employing things like cover crops, riparian buffers, irrigation management, and many more. In the 2018 Farm Bill, there were many advancements in program management that may improve soil health across working lands. First, there are now more activities eligible for technical and financial assistance under EQIP. These include soil health planning and resource crop rotation planning. The actual implementation of these practices were eligible for assistance previously, but not the planning portion. This is important because planning is time-consuming and may be a primary barrier to practice implementation. But now planning for soil health is incentivized under EQIP. In addition, soil testing and soil remediation are eligible for funding, which could provide more assistance to producers, not only on rural soils, but on urban soils as well, because they require a lot more remediation and soil testing. Next, states can elect up to 10 high priority practices that are eligible for up to 90% practice cost coverage. Thus, states could select soil health improving practices for priority, further incentivizing practices such as cover cropping or no-till. Another provision in the Farm Bill improves the distribution of advanced payments under EQIP for socially disadvantaged, beginning, and veteran farmers and ranchers. Previously, advanced payments were not advertised well and payments were capped at 50%. Now, states must automatically offer the option of advanced payments to limited resource farmers and ranchers. States must also ensure that the producers know that this is an option. And if elected, a producer may receive at least 50% of the agreed upon funding and that will be provided in advance for costs related to practices and contracting. This makes it easier for producers to implement conservation practices, which could include soil health improving practices, and helps incentivize their involvement in conservation practices overall. Finally, one of the big ticket changes in the 2018 Farm Bill introduces a soil health demonstration trial under Conservation Innovation Grants on Farm Innovation. Under this provision, up to $10 million of CIG funds are dedicated to these trials. This provides incentives to producers to implement practices that improve soil health and increase soil carbon. Funds will also help to establish measurement protocols in assessing changes in soil health and soil carbon after implementation of these soil health practices. Next up is the Conservation Stewardship Program, or CSP, which is another working lands program administered by the NRCS, and it builds upon EQIP. But unlike EQIP, CSP requires the producer to enroll all of their working lands into the program. CSP requires producers to implement new practices or enhance existing conservation practices throughout the term of a 5-year contract to meet certain stewardship thresholds. Here are a couple of the provisions in the 2018 Farm Bill that may improve soil health through CSP. So first of all, the Farm Bill directs NRCS to manage CSP to enhance soil health to the greatest extent possible. It's unclear what NRCS has done thus far to implement this mandate from what I could find, but this shows that Congress acknowledges the importance of protecting and conserving our nation's soils. Payments are also increased for 3 key soil health practices: cover cropping, resource-conserving crop rotation, and advanced grazing management. For these practices, producers are paid at a minimum 125 or 150% of the determined annual payment amount for all activities pertaining to these 3 practices. This provides financial incentive to producers to implement these specific practices, which help reduce soil erosion and help to build soil organic matter. Next, more activities are eligible for program enrollment and payment and include soil health planning and planning of activities to mitigate extreme climate events. So similar to provisions for planning in EQIP, financial incentives to cover the planning process, there is greater likelihood that a producer will plan and then implement soil health improvement practices. One provision for CSP with unknown consequences is the structural change in the enrollment limitation. So previously, CSP enrollment was capped by acreage, but now as of the 2018 Farm Bill, enrollment is capped by funding. So through this change, administration and support for CSP may be a bit more functionally easier to administer, but the program may not reach as many acres or producers as before. So data on participation, acreage, practice implementation, and program payments will be necessary to really assess the impact of this provision on soil health and conservation as a whole. All right, so let's switch over to a land retirement program now called the Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP, which takes vulnerable land out of production and enrolls it into long-term plant cover to rehabilitate soil health, improve water quality, and create wildlife habitat. CRP is administered by the Farm Service Agency, or FSA. FSA provides CRP participants with annual rental payments for taking land out of production, as well as certain incentive payments and cost share assistance. The first big change under CRP is the introduction of the Soil Health and Income Protection Program, also known as SHIPP. So SHIPP, or through SHIPP, farmers may enter into short-term contracts of 3 to 5 years to place up to 15% of their total eligible land into a CRP contract. The land that is eligible for this program must be the least productive land on the farm. Once enrolled, landowners may receive up to 50% of the normal CRP rate, but there's no financial assistance or cost share for seed and planting vegetative cover. However, under SHIPP, there are more resources for limited resource producers. They can receive more financial assistance as they are authorized to receive 75% of the CRP rental rate instead of 50%, and they may receive a 50% cost share payment for seeds. So the hope of this program is that the most degraded soils on a farm are temporarily taken out of production to conserve and regenerate the soil. Even though the rental payment is lower than a normal CRP payment, the expectation is that this program is still more economically viable and reliable than farming the marginally productive land. This program may be more attractive to producers since it offers a lower time commitment compared to the normal CRP contracts, which are 10 to 15 years long. This program is great for soil health because it takes land that is otherwise less productive and most likely has poor soil health and pays the farmer to let the soil recover for at least 3 years. Another improvement in CRP, which may advance soil health, is the update to the end of CRP contract considerations, which reduces a previous barrier to transitioning land into EQIP or CSP. So this provision allows landowners of an expiring CRP contract to enroll in EQIP or CSP up to 1 year before the contract end date. Landowners are also permitted to begin organic certification within 3 years of the expiring contract. So that way when the contract ends, they could just transition right into organic production. These CRP end of contract considerations greatly increase a farmer's ability to implement conservation practices on working lands once the contract expires. So with this provision in place, the soil ecosystem restored through years under CRP is less likely to be managed in ways that reduce soil health through overlapping financial and technical support for conservation efforts. And although many improvements were made to CRP that may benefit soil health, the Farm Bill did reduce annual rental payments for CRP overall. So now general CRP sign-up is capped at 85% of the estimated county rental rate, and continuous CRP sign-up is capped at 90% of the estimated county rental rate. Time will tell how these decreased rental rates change program enrollment. There is, however, an added incentive to sign up for continuous CRP through a one-time enrollment payout equal to 32.5% of the first annual rental payment. And with all this, there are more incentives for continuous CRP, which is also a new enrollment method brought about by the 2018 Farm Bill. And it's not clear how this new continuous CRP may affect soil health in the long run compared to the general sign-up. Other federal program provisions that were included in the 2018 Farm Bill and may impact soil health include changes to crop insurance, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, and research programs. Crop insurance is offered through the USDA through the Risk Management Agency, or RMA. And in the 2018 Farm Bill, cover cropping is designated as good farming practice, and cover crop termination is more well-defined. So for several years prior to this provision, cover cropping was allowed without affecting cash crop insurability, as long as the cover crop was terminated according to the guidelines published by RMA, NRCS, and FSA. However, there was still a perception that using cover crops could jeopardize insurance coverage. This potentially caused a lack in cover crop practice adoption, but new language in the 2018 Farm Bill highlights cover cropping as a desirable practice and clarifies the cover crop termination definition. This new and improved language for making new guidelines will hopefully ensure crop insurance payments will not be threatened by implementing cover crops, and will thus increase cover crop adoption among producers who rely on crop insurance. Another crop insurance provision closes a sod saver loophole that allowed annual cash crop production on land that was previously in native sod to be eligible for crop insurance if a producer converted to a non-annual crop for 4 consecutive years on that native sod prior to annual production. So the provision in the 2018 Farm Bill closes this loophole by subjecting annual crops to a reduction in crop insurance benefits up to 4 cumulative years within the first 10 years from initial tillage of native sod. So I know that was a mouthful, but basically the goal of this provision is to reduce undesirable crop insurance payments to producers that tilled native sod and to protect lands in native sod across the prairie region by disincentivizing production on those lands. Provisions of the 2018 Farm Bill also increase research efforts on soil health across multiple USD agencies. Now soil health is designated as a purpose and priority to the research efforts, education efforts, and extension activities funded under the Organic Agriculture Research and Extension Initiative run by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Also, soil health has been added as a research area to be addressed under the Bioenergy, Natural Resources, and Environment Priority Area for competitive grants under the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative, which is also run by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Also, the USDA was mandated by the 2018 Farm Bill to conduct additional research and data analysis on the conservation practices and their effects on crop yields and soil health. This provision requires the USDA to report to Congress a summary of findings, how the data will be accessible to university researchers, and any recommendations to allow access of the data to maximize research potential. This will help coordinate research efforts on soil health by both public and private avenues. And hopefully down the road, it will help corroborate conservation practice impacts on crop yields and help build a better economic case for producers to adopt soil health practices. Finally, program changes that may benefit soil health were made to RCPP, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which is administered through NRCS. This program was designed to foster public-private partnerships to advance conservation efforts through innovative solutions and increased funding from private matching. Sean will be speaking more about RCPP in his presentation, and will demonstrate how this program is executed to enhance soil health in Iowa. And I see I might be running out of time here. Pupa, how much more time do I have?
I think if you could wrap up, that'd be great. We have a question that'd be good to get to.
Yeah, no worries. Let's see, I might not be able to get to some state legislation then. So let's see, I'll try and breeze through this quickly. So basically RCPP used to pull money from CSP, EQIP, and ASEP, but now it is its own authorized program, and it has annual funding set at $300 million. And also contracts are eligible to have a little bit more flexibility and have longer contracts and renewal options, which may benefit soil health because soil health practices take a longer time to assess. So there might be more opportunity for soil health initiatives through RCPP. I was going to touch upon some state soil health legislation, but a lot of this information can be found on the Soil Health Institute's website. And also when the slides are available to you, there were 3 programs I was going to highlight that have their own healthy soil programs. So California, New Mexico, and Maryland all have their own state-initiated healthy soils programs. So you can go ahead and click through these once you have the slides to learn a little bit more. And thank you. Sorry I went over my time. I thought I was going to have a lot more time, but I will take any questions.